It's Firearms Friday here at the Wyoming State Museum in Cheyenne. I'm Evan Green. I'm the firearms historian at the museum. And I've been working in the firearms collection for about 5 years. And the working title of today's episode is Grandpa's Concealed Carry Mouse Guns. These are all small, easily concealed, spur-triggered handguns. And I'll start with this one. This is a favorite number one. It is a 6-shot revolver chambered in .22 short. And I was not able to find very much information about it. I'm guessing it is late 50s, early 60s, maybe Civil War era. Because the first revolving handgun that used self-contained metallic cartridges was the Smith & Wesson No1. And it was a handgun, a revolver, chambered in .22 short. They were black powder cartridges at the time, so probably even weaker than what you would have today as a .22 short, which are sometimes really hard to find. I have a box or two in my gun safe. But if you're out and about today and listening to firearms videos or watching stuff online or reading magazines, everybody thinks you got to have, at a minimum, a .380 semi-automatic or a .38 special, or better yet, a 9mm semi-automatic with 17 rounds in it, or a .45 ACP Colt that holds, I think Glocks are, 13 or 14, and some of the Springfield Armory guns are also fairly high capacity. But at some point, somebody considered this all right and enough as a concealed handgun, because I can't think of any purpose for most of these other than self-protection. And that early Smith & Wesson, which was circa 1857, it came out in 1857, was carried by soldiers, enlisted men, and officers in the Civil War in .22 short caliber. You know, as one of my old friends used to say, well, it's better than sharp stick and harsh words. The thing is, even less than today, people in those days didn't want to get shot with anything because, let's see, no anesthetic, no germ theory, surgeons not even washing their hands between operations. Any wound had the potential to be fatal, but I can't imagine these being very intimidating. Although, again, nobody wants to be shot with one. This is an interesting one here. This is a Sharps. It's called a Sharps pepper box. Although to me, a pepper box usually involves revolving barrels. In order to discharge the 4 barrels in this one, the firing pin rotates. Every time you cock the hammer, the firing pin rotates. And to load and unload, the barrels slide forward, I think, so that you can load it and extract the empties. There's no extractor or ejector, so you kind of got to pick those empty cartridges out with your thumbnail. This is a really nice example of this particular little Derringer. Again, spur trigger, .22 short caliber, 4-shot, got nice walnut grips, nice patina on that brass frame. Here's another unfortunate little guy here. This one is also a .22 caliber, and the entire frame and barrel was gunmetal bronze. So this one's obviously been in a fire at some point and is totally non-functional, but also, .22 caliber, man. And while nobody wants to be shot with anything, this seems to be a very small caliber if carried for a defensive handgun. If you go online today and watch firearms videos, particularly by the keyboard commandos, they think nothing short of, at least at a minimum, the .380 semi-automatic handgun, or a .38 caliber revolver, sometimes considered marginal. 9mm is popular, but they think you got to have 17 rounds in the magazine in order to be safe out on the streets. At some point, people got along with much simpler and lower caliber firearms. I assume that most of these guns were intended for self-defense. This is a really nice one. This is by Stevens, and again, it's a .22 caliber single shot. And Stevens was a very reputable manufacturer of high-quality firearms, and this is a very nice example, a nickel-plated with walnut grips. And they were perhaps best known for manufacturing some very high-quality target pistols, looking similar except larger with longer barrels and much better sights. So this is not a target pistol. What else could it be used for? We've made the assumption, perhaps, for self-defense. It's a single shot. And you recall that nobody wanted to be shot with anything back in the days before anesthetics or penicillin or germ theory. The doctor didn't wash his hands between taking the bullet out of the last guy and you. So I can't imagine these guns being very intimidating. But again, nobody wanted to be shot with them. I speculate maybe this one in particular could have been carried by a guy on his trap line and used it to dispatch the animals that he caught. He didn't want to be burdened with a long gun or a heavier revolver. So, a possibility. Don't know for sure. If you've got ideas or have personal information about the use of these, because there were many of them made at that period in time. This is my go-to reference book, and when I started looking at these little guns, I called this the series Grandpa's Concealed Carry Mouse Guns. But this is a go-to manual for me when I'm unfamiliar with a type of firearm or an individual firearm. And when I went looking in here, there's page after page after page of this type of very small firearm chambered in .22 and .32 calibers. So there was obviously a big demand. Many of those were single-shot handguns. This is kind of an interesting one here. I think this is an Excelsior. And this is pretty, despite the corrosion, this was probably a fairly inexpensive firearm. In fact, there's a whole genre of these really inexpensive little guns that are called flour sack guns because sometimes they were given away when you bought a 100-pound sack of flour. And of course, either free in that case or much less expensive than the equivalent Colt or Smith & Wesson revolver in the time. And here's a Colt. This is a Colt No1. And we're seeing an increase in caliber. This old rusty one was a .32. This is a .38. It's a .38 Colt, which is really the same as the .38 Smith & Wesson cartridge. And in those days, if you were manufacturing Colts, you didn't want to stamp your competitor's name on the barrel when you specified the caliber. This is a really nice little gun. It's got ivory grips, probably 50% of the nickel plate. Remaining, everything still functions. And we're talking now about a reasonably efficient self-defense cartridge. British soldiers in World War II were armed with revolvers that fired the .38 Smith & Wesson cartridge. So they thought it was sufficient for those purposes. And, battles aren't won by handguns. It's a down and dirty self-defense gun. This is another one. This is, we're regressing a little bit. This is a .32 caliber, and this is called a Napoleon. These little guns had all sorts of weird names at the time, Thug's Challenge or whatever. This one's called a Napoleon. And it's similar to the Colt No1 because of that circular access port into the working mechanisms of the two revolvers. So there you go. If you've got information about the use of some of these, particularly the smaller single shots in .22 calibers, please educate me and put them in the comment section down below. If you've got questions or want to talk about firearms and Wyoming history, you can contact me through the museum. There's a main number on the museum's homepage, and you call them up, leave a message. They will get in touch with me, and I will respond to that message. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching.